Welcome to Between Heaven and Earth, an internet radio talk show where we help you connect spirit and divine guidance. Lisa Kay, your host, brings you shows that can enhance and transform your life with tips and new ideas for more happiness, abundance, and better relationships. Lisa is an expert on intuition and can show you how to strengthen your inner guidance to empower yourself. Each show is positive and uplifting to inspire your day. Her guest speakers are specialists on self-help, positive thinking, spirituality, and conscious living. Be the best that you can be with Between Heaven and Earth, conscious living for your soul.
And angel blessings to everyone. I'm Lisa Kay, and I'm your host. And our show today is going to be a solo show. I'm going to be here doing what actually I used to do quite a bit, which is to bring you some tips and knowledge and things that can enhance your day-to-day life. And my specialty is in intuition. So our show today is called What is Intuition? And the reason why I picked this topic is because a lot of people want to know what intuition is. What is it about? It's a very nebulous thing. So we're going to talk about what intuition is today. We're actually going to go over some of the brain science behind intuition. There actually is a lot of scientific research and scientific evidence on intuitive processes and how they work. And my background is in psychobiology, so I'm really fascinated by all this stuff. And I can simplify it for you so that you can see how there actually is real science and real research behind this phenomenon we call intuition. And I'll also present to you a little bit of how we use intuition day to day and actually how it's used in business. There's actually been some research that was done by some researchers scientists who studied intuition in business across the world. And the results are fascinating. I had come across this research when I was doing my PhD dissertation in intuition. So we are also out there on Facebook. So if you want to leave us a comment or ask a question, you can do that at facebook.com/Between Heaven and Earth. And as we're going through the show, I will be checking the Facebook page to see if there are any comments there. And if you're listening to the recording, then certainly this pops up a lot of different places. But go to the Facebook page, and you can always leave me a comment there, or go to my website at lmk88.com and ask a question. I love questions. I love answering them for people, and that's what I'm here for. So we're going to go over intuition, and at the end, I'll try to give you some tips on how you can enhance your intuition. So let's start. Again, as I mentioned before, what I do is I teach people how to develop their intuition so they can make it happen when they want, on what they want, and get information from it. Because I found that intuition can be really, really helpful in your life if you build a skill so that it can happen on things that you want it to happen on, rather than random things that seem to pop up, like, I was just thinking about my friend and walking down the street, and then boom, right around the corner, there she was. Cool stuff, but not always terribly useful. So I studied how to develop that skill, the intuitive skill, and you really can develop it. It's really actually quite fascinating that you can develop this because it exists. Intuition exists. So what is intuition? Well, if you look at the dictionary definition, the Oxford Dictionary defines intuition as the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. So that's the Oxford University Press. From the Merriam-Webster dictionary, intuition is the, quote, quick and ready insight, immediate comprehension or cognition, the power or faculty of attaining direct knowledge or cognition, thinking, without evidential, rational thought and inference. So what does all that mean? That's a lot of fancy words, but it's really actually pretty simple. Intuition is simply knowing without knowing how you know it. And so knowing without knowing how we know it, it's just the knowing, it's the information that we receive, and we can receive it in a lot of different ways. I'll go over that a little bit later. Sometimes people want to know, well, what's the difference between intuition and being psychic? Uh, and I always like to ask this question when I speak with a large group of people. I ask the audience, how many of you believe that you are psychic? And yeah, I might get one or two or none. Never really more than, I'd say, a handful of people. If I ask same group of people, how many of you feel that you are intuitive? And almost everybody raises their hands. Well, this is what the definition of being psychic is. It's knowing that comes to us mysteriously from outside of us. That's sort of the general definition. Again, intuition is knowing without knowing how we know it, and being psychic is what people think is that mysterious knowledge that comes from who knows where outside of us. But I think that you see how the definitions are very close to each other. So it could be that maybe psychic is just an extreme form of intuition, which I think it really is. Now, definitions are that they're just sort of interpretations. But I guess you might be wondering, what is this intuition? Where is intuition? Where is it? Is there a function in our brains? How does the mind and the brain work with intuition? So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at the brain. So it's been said that people, only use 10% of our brain power, and that means that that's what we're when we're thinking, that it's only in 10% of our brain that we're using. People kind of assume that the other 90% is sort of up for grabs. What is it doing? But really, our entire brain is being used all the time. It's just that we're not really conscious of it. And we consciously process. We're only aware of this small amount of what's going on in our brains because the rest of our brain is really busy with keeping our body going. The brain is processing and it's handling all kinds of things that we don't need to pay attention to. And what we are paying attention to are things that our consciousness needs to worry about. So that's the bigger picture. Our, quote, executive functions are, helping us get through our day. If we're going to make our breakfast, if we're going to eat, if we need to go somewhere, where do we need to go, and so on. Go to work, go to school, things like that. Now, much of what's going on in our brain, that 90%, is unconscious. We're not aware of it. Now, if we were conscious of all of that 90% of what's going on in the rest of our brains, we'd be so overwhelmed. It would be so much noise that we wouldn't be able to probably do anything. Every little thing that was going on in our brains would be conscious, and you'd be aware of it, and it would just make you crazy. So what is happening in this other part of our brains, our minds, the subconscious mind? Well, Diane Hennessy Powell wrote the book, The ESP Enigma, and it's a wonderful book. And if you're interested in all the science behind this intuitive ESP psychic phenomenon, her book is awesome. And she was actually on this show, and she was phenomenal. But what she says in her book is that our unconscious mind is estimated to take in more than 1 billion pieces of information a second. This is going to quickly overload our conscious mind if it reaches our awareness, our consciousness. So really less than 1% does. And that's what she said in her book. So our brains are filtering what we are consciously aware of, either because it's very busy processing information in the background, controlling the functions of our body, or it stores it subconsciously either to be used later, which is very interesting. You pick up information all the time and you're not totally aware of it. Or maybe we pick up information and we don't use it later on. We generally have an awareness and access to this information either through our dreams or through our intuition. And there's a wealth of information that we are processing in our brains. We just don't know what it is. Now, we're going to go more into what is that information. And, we're not always aware of where it comes from. It might be things that we can pinpoint, like, you may have heard a conversation that you weren't consciously aware of, or maybe you're picking up information from, like, intuition's definition says we don't know where. So here's an example. Whenever we look at something, our brains make trillions of calculations within milliseconds of that information that we're getting that to create this image. And our brains will do things like determine the depth between objects by their shadows, or maybe the subtle differences between the two images that we see with our two eyes together. We see thousands of different color hues, even though our retinas only have 3 types of cones, which represent 3 types of colors. So it's fascinating how we actually can process and interpret different color hues. And all of those calculations are being done without our conscious awareness. Our digestive system. Now, I'm going through this because you're going to find that intuition and this psychic phenomena comes through all these different ways, and the way we process is really quite interesting. And then after break, I'll continue this. But our digestive system is doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of complex things going on there. And when we come back from break, I'll tell you a little bit more about how your digestive system actually is kind of like your brain, which I find is amazing. So hang in there with us. We'll be right back after our break.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com. and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
And welcome back. I'm Lisa Kay, and you're listening to Between Heaven and Earth Radio. And I am talking about what intuition is today. We're looking at it from the scientific standpoint, more from the physical and the mental standpoint what it is and to help you understand what intuition is. It is a real phenomenon. Science has actually proven that. There's a lot of research that has been done in the scientific community that is really quite fascinating to show that what we would think is, quote, psychic actually does exist. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. But I wanted to continue what we were talking about, which is the different parts of us that is processing information, and also where processing what we believe is intuitive information. And we're talking about our digestive system. So, and before we went to break, I mentioned that we actually have another brain in our digestive system, which is actually quite fascinating. So digesting food and processing nutrients is actually a very, very complex thing. And it's so complex that we actually have a second brain, as I mentioned, in our gut. And that second brain is called the enteric nervous system. Now, science has discovered that the digestive system has all the same neurotransmitters as in the brain. And what a neurotransmitter is the substances that transmit signals through your nerves, through your neurons. And those are all the same, whether it's in your enteric nervous system or in your brain. And that's also why you may find that if you take medication that affects your brain, your mind, it also affects your stomach. And for, a variety of reasons, but that's part of the reason. And science has found that our gut processes information at a level of complexity that allows it to actually learn and remember and act independently. So obviously it's not getting up and going out and driving a car, but it is doing what it's doing. It's digesting your food, but it's doing it in a way that is gathering information and doing things with it and learning, which is kind of a cool thing. Another area in our bodies where we actually have another nervous center, so to speak, is our heart. Our physical heart also has its own nervous system that science has found that it can actually sense and process information again. It can actually make decisions separately from our brain, and it has even demonstrated an ability to learn and have some memory. And again, the heart also releases hormones and neurotransmitters that we talked about earlier that communicates with the body and the brain. So these hormones are being released by the heart, and our minds, our brains, and the rest of our bodies reacting to it. So what is it that our brains can actually pick up? Well, there's a ton of information our brains can and our bodies are processing all the time. So it's not just our brain, obviously, it's our bodies, it's our heart, it's our stomach, it's the whole thing is picking up information and doing something with it. And some of this information seems magical. And science has studied some of what our bodies all our brains can do. And again, we're not really quite sure where it's all coming from. But some of the things that science has shown that we can do is, number one, remote viewing, and I'll explain what that means. It can predict the future. This is what scientifically has been proven that we can do, and telepathy. And you may be surprised. I was surprised that we can actually scientifically prove that this happens. And it is just absolutely fascinating. So here's what some of the scientific research has found. So let's talk about remote viewing. So what remote viewing is the ability for a person to intuitively, quote, see another location, a physical location that they've never been to before, and describe the physical features accurately. So let's say you've never been to, I don't know, let's see, Johannesburg, South Africa, and say somebody living there says, "Oh, come remote view my house." Intuitively you would be able to go and pick up visual or imagery intuitively about that house, having never been there, and having no one ever describe it to you. You could actually describe what you pick up to the person. And this phenomenon has been studied by science, and it's so striking. And part of why it's so striking is it can be easily validated with, little dispute. So, what they discovered is that people can actually do this, and the United States government actually was so enthralled by this that they performed studies to see if it could be used in the military. They wanted to see how well it could be done, and maybe they can go places where nobody's been before, or at least we haven't been before, kind of remote spying without actually having to use any equipment. So what happened was in the Stanford Research Institute, there were 3 physicists that performed studies on remote viewing. And many of the studies were done in an electromagnetically isolated chamber. So what is that? That's like a room that's shielded from electromagnetic waves, which might be radio waves, it might be light. And the tests were done so there were no external influences electromagnetically. So, again, those are cell phone signals or radio waves and so on. Isolation chamber. And some of the results were very striking. Diane Hennessy-Powell, who I mentioned earlier, she wrote in her book, there was, and I'm quoting this, there was one experiment that Price, who could do remote viewing very well, did. In one experiment, Price sketched a secret Soviet atom bomb laboratory, and I'll try to pronounce this, in Semipalatinsk, Siberia, just from knowing its latitude and longitude. So they gave this guy latitude and longitude of a place. And Price continues, his drawing showed external structures that were previously unknown, but later confirmed by satellite photography. Now, this was done way, way before Google Earth. And I believe it was done in the 60s or the 70s. Now, Price's description was so accurate, it raised concerns of a breach of national security. Can you believe that? And a formal investigation was ordered by Congress, and they concluded that there was no security breach. So his remote viewing of this Soviet atom bomb laboratory in Siberia was so accurate that it surprised everybody. They thought, oh my gosh, there must have been a leak in national security, but there wasn't. So that was interesting. Now, in another experiment, the researchers wanted to see if distance was a factor in accuracy of remote viewing. And one remote viewer was asked to draw Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, before the NASA Pioneer flyby occurred. So NASA had sent up the space probe Pioneer, and it was going to fly by Jupiter. And before it did, they asked him to draw Jupiter. And what he did was he drew Jupiter with a ring around this large planet, obviously. And they thought it was an error. Maybe it was Saturn. Until actual pictures came back from the Pioneer showing for the first time that there are rings around Jupiter. It's fascinating. So science has continued to also study, as I mentioned, so that was remote viewing. So what they also did was they looked at predicting the future. And everybody wants to know what happens in the future, right? That's why people go to psychics, or they want to know what's going to happen. That's the biggest, probably number one question. What will happen? Tell me the future. So the definition scientifically is precognition, is defined as knowledge of a future event or situation, especially through ESP, extrasensory means. So that's what precognition is. And generally, it's the way it's done in scientific research. They have what they call test subjects try to predict the color of a light that's going to turn on out of a choice of four. So there are four lights, and they're different colors, and you have to predict which one's going to light up next. Or they might say, choose a picture card that's going to show up out of a selection of five. So there'll be five cards. It could be like playing cards, and you know what the five are, but you have to predict which one's going to show up, and they just pick them randomly. So a random event generator, generates the light or generates the card. And so neither the person doing the testing or being tested knew what was going to come up. So it's called the double-blind study, which is considered to be one of the most robust because the tester can't give any unconscious clues to the person being tested as to what the correct answer is going to be. And this study had been performed thousands and thousands of times by different researchers. And they found out that when they analyzed the overall results of 309 laboratory studies on predicting the future over 52 years, the studies found, and they included 2 million trials, 50,000 participants, and their results showed, the positive results showed that if the positive results due to chance would be 5%, right? So if it was just random, it would be, they would get it right 5% of the time. But the analysis showed that 37% of those studies had positive results. So instead of 5, it was 37. And because of the large number of trials, the probability of such results, that not occurring by chance, the probability that it's actually a real thing was greater than 1 billion to 1. Can you believe that? That's if it were going to happen by chance, it'd be 1 billion. 1 out of 1 billion if it were due to chance. So amazing stuff. We're going to go to break and stick with us, and we're going to talk more about intuition when we come back.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Matt Connerton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connerton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connerton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Earth Radio, and today we're talking about intuition. I'm just giving you an overview of what it is, and I'm sure many of you believe it already. But it's just fascinating to find out what research has been done out there to show that, hey, I'm not making this up. I'm not crazy. There is evidence out there amongst thousands of people that's been scientifically proven to show that it's possible to actually see remotely other places where I've never been, and that telepathy actually really does exist. And we're at our half hour mark, so I usually do a little bit of an announcement in terms of, things that are going on and what's happening. And I have an online course on developing your intuition, which really helps you. What I did was I learned how to develop my intuition to the point where I actually became a sold out intuitive reader, which blew me away because I never wanted to really do readings. I kind of fell into it purely out of my intense curiosity on how do you make they say intuition can be developed and you can get it under your control. So I wanted to learn how to do that. And I studied. The problem was that you have to go through a lot of different places to get really good, solid information. And I went to a lot of different courses and teachers, and then I started to study metaphysics, and I started to study intuition just from a scientific standpoint and from a non-scientific standpoint, and I learned a lot. That's how I'm built. I like to do that. And I figured it out. I'm not the kind of person who was intuitive when I was little. I was not someone who could automatically just use my intuition for anything. I had to learn from scratch. In fact, I thought I was really terrible. I didn't think I was intuitive at all. I didn't think I was certainly not psychic. So, but I learned how to do it. And I got it under my control to the point where it actually saved my life. And that's a story for another time. But if you want to go to my website at lmk88.com, you can listen to my story and how it saved my life. But now I teach other people how to develop theirs because I think that's really where it's at. Intuition is really a way to get this knowledge that we say is in the other 90% of our brains and maybe beyond us. We don't know where it comes from. Divine sources that leads us to manifesting amazing things. Synchronicity. If you follow your intuition, you can even become enlightened, live a happier life, and it's done that for me. Amazing things have happened in my life because my intuition is so good and so honed so well now, and I can make it happen when I want, on what I want, and get lots of great information from it. And I can teach you how to do that too. And that's what I'm all about. That's what I do. So if you're interested in more, you can go to my website at lmk88.com. Those are my initials. Long story why that website's like named that way, but Lisa K was taken. So lmk88.com. And there's lots of freebies there. You can sign up for my newsletter where I send out tips on a monthly basis. And if you're interested, you can get even more. And you get a free ebook on developing your intuition, plus 16 intuition exercises you can do on your own at home, all by yourself, and develop your intuition. And if you're interested in my Developing Your Intuition online course, you can look at lmk88.com/member, MEMBER. I also have a lot of free information there too if you sign up for the access to the free stuff. So that's what I do. I teach people how to develop their intuition. It's fascinating. If you have access to your intuition, you can know things without knowing how you know it, but know things that can help steer your life in amazing ways, improve your love life, your health, find your soulmate. You can know when you're making it up and when it really is your intuition. When you get those funny little intuitive I guess mysterious things that I get this feeling, I don't know what it is, or that person gives me the willies, but I don't know why, or I think this person is trying to tell me something, but I'm not quite sure. Your intuition can help you, give you the answers to all of those. And if I can do it, you can do it. So anyway, let's continue on. I wanted to go and talk a little bit more about telepathy. Telepathy is defined as the transmission of information from one person to another without using any physical interaction. And, more generally, or most people know, it's like reading someone else's mind. And scientists have found that this stuff, it really exists. And, just how did they do it? How did they figure out? How did they test this stuff? How did they know? Well, what they would do is they put somebody in a room and they eliminate all external, what they call stimuli, anything that might be interfering with someone getting messages. So on the outside. So they would like cover their eyes. They'd be in a single colored light environment, and they'd wear headphones with just the noisemaker, so it has that they don't hear anything, they don't see anything, and they're just lying there quietly. And that person would be in a separate room from what they would call the sender. And so the receiver, the person picking up the mental information intuitively, would be isolated, and the sender would be in another room down the hall, far away, in a closed room, and they would be shown a randomly chosen picture. And what they discovered, and the receiver had to try to pick up what it was that the sender was mentally sending them, as far as the photograph. And what they discovered was that after they'd done thousands of trials of this over 30 years, see, it's not just one experiment, but they did thousands, hundreds and hundreds. Out of the 3,000 trials, 1,000, and actually out of 3,145 trials, 1,008 were successful in transmitting information telepathically. That's a third. So actually it's a 32% hit rate, a 32% rate at which they got it right. And that was, they said, 7% higher than chance. So now the odds of this happening are 29 quintillion to 1. So if you want to compare all these numbers, I know there are a lot of numbers, the odds of winning the Powerball lottery, getting all those 5 numbers right, and the Powerball is 175 million to 1. This is 29 quintillion to 1. That's 29 with 18 zeros after it. That it would be happen to chance. So what does that mean? That means if it's happening by chance, it's just random. It's just, oh, well, that was just coincidence. So for it to happen by coincidence, the odds of it happening are very, very, very small. You think the odds of winning the Powerball is small. The odds of telepathy being coincidence is even smaller, so much smaller. So, okay, so I gave you a lot of science there. And it's basically, if in a nutshell, the chance of all this phenomena, all this psychic, this telepathy, this predicting the future, remote viewing of happening by randomly, by coincidence, as people say it's coincidence, is so low that it's basically scientifically it shows that there is the phenomenon really does exist. And that's what science does. It's looking at it from a statistical standpoint. So let's look at intuition in business. There's been a lot of, and then I'm going to get to, after our next break, I'm going to get to how you can, some hints on how you can help develop yours. Now that I've spent a lot of time showing you that it really exists, which I'm sure a lot of us believe already, but you can go share that with some of your friends who don't believe. Intuition in business. There's been a lot of research on how using it in the workplace. And in particular, they interviewed executives in high-level management. And the fact that intuition is considered at all important, just even to spend the time and energy to research its use and effectiveness in business, it just shows that the business community, because they're the ones that do the research, they consider that intuition not only exists, but that it is important in business. The only controversy, of course, is where the information comes from, but it is still considered, it's very vital to use your intuition in making decisions at a high level. So let's see, this was Daniel Eisenberg who wrote in the Harvard Business Review. In making their day-to-day and minute-by-minute tactical maneuvers, senior executives tend to rely on several general thought processes, such as using intuition, managing a network of interrelated problems, dealing with ambiguity, inconsistency, novelty, and surprise, and integrating action into the process of thinking. So generations of writers on the art of management have recognized that practicing managers rely heavily on intuition. So this survey that I mentioned, done by Jagdish Parikh, surveyed over 1,300 managers around the world to determine how intuition is perceived by these top managers. And the surveys revealed that 79% of the managers use intuition to make decisions to some extent. 77% believe that intuition contributes to greater success in business. But you know, it's really fascinating. Only 52% would openly admit that they use their intuition at all. So almost 80% use it all the time, but only 50% would say that, oh, yeah, I do use it. So it's, it's out there. It's the secret that they don't want to share with anybody. And in addition, and then we're going to go to break, is over 80% of these business people, they believe that intuition is a decision without logical or rational methods. They also believe, the same 80%, that it comes from within. It's a sixth sense. It's an instinct. And less than 20% felt it was a result of accumulated experience. So that I thought was interesting. So basically what they're saying is 80% of the people who use their intuition in business believe that it comes from outside of them or some other process they can't explain. It's not experience. Right? If you're going to solve a problem that comes up that's new and you've never had experience with it, well, then obviously you can't rely on the subconscious experience knowledge. It has to come from somewhere else. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to show you how you can use your intuition and how you can develop a little bit what you can do to make it stronger. So stay with us.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business. Join Elliot Jolish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jolish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jolish Hour.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
And welcome back. I'm Lisa Kay, and you are listening to Between Heaven and Earth Radio, and we're answering the question, what is intuition? And basically, I guess there was a lot of talk that I did earlier about showing that intuition really does exist from a scientific standpoint. So I hope that was interesting and useful to you. But let's go on and talk about what this means to you and how you can help develop yours. So, what's the best way to prepare to be more intuitive? Well, the first thing is to think about that we don't, that again, intuition is knowing without knowing how we know it. And sitting in that understanding and knowing that it doesn't matter where it comes from, right? It doesn't matter whether it is something that we have coalesced and came up through our subconscious or whether it came from outside of us. It really, the phenomenon works. And we showed that with some evidence earlier. So what's the best way to get our intuition to happen when we want, rather than randomly? And how does it come to us in our subconscious? How do we make it conscious? What is an intuitive experience like? These are some things that you want to focus on to help be prepared to be more intuitive. And how do we work with our intuition to make sense of it? So let's talk a little bit about the science behind the intuitive mind. I know we talked a lot about science, but I want to talk now about your mind, your brain, and how it works. And if you understand how the brain works, it will help you understand how to work it. So I guess if you have, let's say you want to build up, you want to be a bodybuilder. Well, when you understand a little bit more about how muscles work and how to feed them and how to exercise them and why, in my mind, you'll learn how to be a better bodybuilder. Well, the same thing for intuition. If you understand a little bit more about how it works inside your brain and in your mind, then you can work with it more intelligently and really move it along in terms of your skill. So the first thing is to understand that we have two halves of our brain. Our brain is actually split into two. We've got the left brain, what they call the left brain, and the right brain, which is really the left half of the brain and the right half. And I talk about this. There's, we'll go into this, that there's some interesting studies that have been done and how these two sides of our brain work differently. And the brain is very plastic, but generally this is where this is how it works in terms of things that we use it for. So the left side of our brain is used for things for us thinking linearly or sequentially. So that's the side that counts: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's the side that's rational, that is knows how to organize. How do we put our ducks in a row? It's very detail oriented. We're using our left brain when we go through the detail. We use the left side of our brain for language, to speak, to read, to recognize words. It is also the side that's very judgmental. It's the thing that's going to decide what is right and what is wrong. It also gives us a sense of self, our ego, and a feeling of I am, and I am conscious. The right side of our brain is the side that is going to process information, which means that it sees the big picture. So when you're looking at a picture, say you're looking at, there's one of those tests where it says, okay, here's a picture, we took out one item, and here's the same picture with one item missing. Can you tell us what it is? You're using the right side of your brain to figure that out, because it can see it sees changes in environment. So that means it's holistic, it's gestalt. We process our feelings there, our emotion. It has no words. It processes information more symbolically with symbols. So it recognizes things that have, in terms of, what would a symbol be? Well, let's say, a sign is a symbol, right? So when you see the stop sign without the word stop on it, and it's the hexagon that's red, we all know that shape usually means to stop, or the light's red, that means to stop. That's a symbol. Our subconscious is living there, so to speak. the right side of our brain notices new things. Oh, something's different in here. What is that? That's our right brain saying that something's different in this room. It's also at peace with all that is. It's not worrying. It feels very connected to everything. It is also very intuitive. That's where our intuition lives. So if we look at our left brain, the left side of our brain, again does analysis. It's thinking linearly. It's judging. The non-psychic kinds of things that we do when we're thinking is usually analyzing. If we are judging, that's usually a non-psychic process. When we have thoughts that are, and this is how you can tell whether you're getting information that's intuitive or psychic, which is to me is the same thing, or not, and you're just thinking in your brain it's me. So to answer the question, is it me or am I making it up? If the information that you are getting is a judgment, okay, it could be, well, that person, okay, I see Joe over there and he's just all full of fluff and he just cares about, how he looks. Well, that's a judgment. That's not psychic. And that's also a left brain thing. Fear is not psychic. If there's a lot of fear in, oh, well, what if Joe doesn't like me, or what if Jane doesn't like me? And that's a fear thought. So that's not psychic. That's not intuitive. Doubt is not intuitive. And these are things that happen in our left brain because it's all about ego. It's all about judgment. Second guessing, again, that's a judgment thing. That's our left brain. So that's a non-psychic thing. Now, our right brain is, again, the characteristics of it are more intuitive. So, because that's where our intuition lives. So the right brain, again, notices new things. It's in the now. It's very much present. It's not worrying about the future. It's not worrying about the past. It has no words. It talks in symbols. It's very connected to our feelings. Our intuitive messages, our intuition is going to come to us through our feelings. It might be an emotional feeling. It might be a physical feeling. It is to be aware of what's happening in your, when you are in the now, when you're in the present, your intuitive messages are usually about now. They're not about the future. They're really more about, okay, we're comfortable here where we are. And if you say, well, if I think about, if I want to know whether I should go A or B, and B gives me not such a great feeling now, then well, maybe B is not the thing to do. Intuition talks to us in symbols. It talks to us in signs, and so we may, if you ask your intuition, and or if your intuition is giving you a feeling of, let's see, or well, let me see if I can pick a symbol for you. If I work with my intuition and I, again, ask which way should I go, A or B, and then all of a sudden I see a red color in my mind, that may be stop, right? That symbolizes not to go. And if I say, okay, well, what about A? And I see a green color in my mind, that's saying, okay, go that direction. So I'm giving you this difference between the right brain and the left brain so that you understand that the right brain is where our intuition is. The things that you do with your right brain are going to be things that will help increase your awareness of your intuition. So, and also work with your intuition. So the right brain does, again, it's holistic gestalt, which means that it's aware of the big picture. It's aware of when you walk in a room, how does it feel overall? And what is different about this room than before. And that, when you practice being aware of those things, you're exercising your right brain, which is the intuitive side of you. Another part of our brains that is where we get some of our intuition is through our old limbic system or old reptilian brain. So and what that does is that gives us access to our gut feelings, our physical feelings, because that's where all that information passes through our limbic system. And so that's another part of our brain that's actually also very intuitive. And I just kind of throw that in there because it is important to know that, all these things are very connected. So what can you do? I was trying to kind of separate the right brain from the left brain, and that understanding that the more you work with your right brain, the more your intuition is going to improve. So what are the things that you could do to work with your right brain? Well, you can be more creative. You can listen and appreciate music, be aware of the things around you, notice things around you. Think in abstract and creative ways. Remember, the right brain is very abstract. And use your imagination, because the imagination is the doorway to your intuition, to your soul. So that was it. I know I gave you a lot of information today, but intuition is a big topic, and that was, and we just kind of touched on what intuition is, kind of gave you a little proof, and how you can improve yours just by thinking more right brain and doing more right brain exercises. You've been listening to Between Heaven and Earth, Conscious Living for Your Soul. Tune in next time, and we'll see you then. Angel blessings, everyone.